It has to be guided by both. And I would say that the thing is, there isn't a split. There have been examples throughout human history when the pursuit of something scientific or technological has led to horrible consequences. It has to be balanced. You said at the beginning, balance. Merely pursuing science for the sake of science would lead to potentially wasteful or even harmful ends. But the important thing is to know the limits of what you are doing. We face this now, for example, in the fields of biotechnology, where there is and will continue to be very serious debate on the cloning of animals, which leads us to the notion of the cloning of human beings. Now, you have a whole ethical consideration here, and this is going to be part of the discussion among medical professionals, among politicians, among people representing religions of the world, and so on. And so we will be grappling with that. But the important thing is that I think the balance has been tipped, and we depend too much on numbers and on the appearance of technology and machines to answer the fundamental questions in business and organizations.
Does the issue of science over human resources change, or does it move in cycles in terms of that balance?
Well, I think that we always look for balance. We always have something moving dramatically in one direction, and then it's righted by the countervailing force. There is a law of science that says for every action there is an equal but opposite reaction. So we are constantly moving in those kinds of directions, hoping to find a middle ground, but the middle ground is where things tend to come to a halt, and then it tips another way, or it tips yet another way. So that's the challenge.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. The question comes to us from the Centro de Gestión de Investigación in Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic.
Muchas gracias. My
name is Roberto Santana, and we are here at the Hotel Jaragua. My question is the following. To what extent do these 10 principles, management principles, can be modified or can be affected in their implementation? When we are talking about organizations that are government organizations, in other words, do those apply to the state and to governments? Considering that the operation of the state and government organizations are usually driven or abide by certain rules and principles of competitiveness that are completely different from those of the governing the private sector.
That's a very important distinction and a very important perspective to bring to this, because one of the problems is that I would propose that not just these principles. I have discussed 10 here about timeless management, but there are others that you can think of, others that others can think of. At one level, I would say that if you truly agree with the validity of these, then they would be operable in any environment. However, that's where the difficulty comes in. We've talked about what it takes to implement principles like this. Otherwise, why recognize them? That's what we said at the very beginning. How do you create an environment in which these can work. If you are operating in a government or a political setting, then you know that years of self-interest, territorial considerations, political realities, personal conflicts are all written into the structures of government. And one of the things that happens is that that organization becomes more important than the people who work within it and the people who are served by it, which is one of the fundamental reasons that governments sometimes are overturned, because people have had enough. They are no longer operating on humanistic values. They have become entities in and of themselves. And the critical ingredient, the critical challenge, is how to keep an organization responsive to human needs. So you face you have to be political in the way you implement these principles, but I don't believe that they should be compromised within a governmental setting. Otherwise, they'll be just as, not timeless, but just as ephemeral and compromised as principles usually are.
I think that was a great question.
Yes, it was,
a great question. We have a question coming to us now from the Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá, from Panama. And your question, please.
The question is the following. What kind of organizational structure is or would be the most adequate in order for a company to achieve organizational success?
That's another wonderful question, because just as I asked the question at the end of, when you were rating yourself on how responsive you were to these timeless principles, that little quiz at the end of my talk, the question I asked is how able are you to change a model to suit the local or the individual needs of your organization or where you operate. The beauty of what I'm saying, I believe, is that there is no single model. You see, human beings, on the one hand, love to think that all they have to do is find the single key to how organizations should run, and that's it. And things will be solved. But that isn't the way it works. Organizations evolve over time. Again, during my discussion, I mentioned the fact that the organization that may be needed when a company or a business or an organization first begins is very different than what happens after it becomes, say, an adolescent organization, or then a mature or even an old organization. Sometimes what happens is the founder of a business, who is very entrepreneurial and who started a place in his garage, then hires people and they move to an office, and he has to be in a corner office, and they have to have organization charts, and before you know it, everything becomes stodgy. So the important thing is to keep rearranging things for the purpose of the organization, which is to relate to other people.
Good. I think we have time for one more quick question from La Paz at the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California Sur. And your question, please.
From Baja California, greetings to you. We have the following question related to the one that we just heard. This current of organizational change in structures lead us to specialization. Do you recommend that we should only create smaller structures, or do you mean just creating micro enterprises, small businesses only? what shall we say to managers or those who are at the top of the organizations if they want to grow? What should we tell them? We're seeing a clear example between IBM, which is now implementing a new strategy. What do you recommend? A tendency of small business creation only or specializing companies, or what do you think would be the key to organizational success?
I think what we observe more commonly is that a large organization needs to be made up of a series of smaller entities, each of which is focused on its particular mission. As I said in my opening remarks, if you look to a human being as an example of an organism, which we are, our head does one thing, our hands do another, our body parts each do different but interconnected things. So we are a single organism which is made up of differentiated elements, each of which does its specialty. There is a tendency in more hierarchical models of business and organizations to think that the head, the chief executives, the people who are often paid the most and who are given the most authority, that they can tell everybody else what to do and that they are all-knowing. I think what we need is a series of integrated, specialized, well-differentiated elements so it is small within however large it needs to be.
The small groups will win. You achieve small wins, and you add them up for ultimate success.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you for those questions. They were all excellent. And now let's move to the second module of our program, in which Stephen will expand on the timeless principles and highlight the need to observe nature and human nature.
In our first discussion, we talked about 10 timeless principles of management. Now, I want to talk with you about 10 timeless principles based upon observations of nature and human nature that can help every organization relate to people and organizations outside of themselves. In other words, these are 10 timeless principles of marketing. No matter how wonderful and productive your organization may be, you depend upon working with others outside of it in order to be truly successful. So you constantly have to be looking for a sound basis to know how to interact with others. The linkages that you make with the outside world are crucial. As I asked you to do in the first segment of this program, try to picture an average human being as the focal point of your business or organization. If you can't use someone else as a point of reference, think of yourself. And as you think of that average person, think of how the principles I'm talking about relate to that person, you, and others. The first timeless marketing principle is that people are not robots. Oh, sure, you'll say, everyone knows that. And I would tend to agree with you, if it were not for the fact that almost everywhere you look today, organizations forget that. They treat living and breathing human beings as though they were machines. Today, many companies take the easy way out. In order to save money, they use robots to answer their telephones. Instead of our talking with people, recordings tell us, if you want international flight information, press 1. If you want reservations, press 2. You know the routine. Don't you feel frustrated when you have to listen to all of those options and none of them is what you want? Well, more and more people feel that way. And when enough people let organizations know exactly how they feel, those robots will disappear, as they should. Human beings want to be dealt with one-on-one. It is just a matter of human nature that people want someone to listen to them, to hear what they have to say specifically. They want to be able to communicate with organizations, person to person. They don't want to be treated like numbers. However, no matter how large or small, most organizations prefer to standardize their communications with their clients and with the outside world. They say to themselves, there are so many of them and so few of us in our organization, we cannot possibly deal with everyone personally. So they make the mistake of giving up on person-to-person communications, and they actually lose business because of it. We have all received letters and brochures that are written impersonally. In most every case, the first thing we say to ourselves when we receive such a communication is that they don't care about us. Organizations that are wise communicate one-on-one to the best of their ability. Sure, we all get tired of having to deal with people one-on-one, but there is no other way. In fact, if you really listen to your patrons and what they individually have to say, they will help your organization grow and succeed by suggesting new products and services. In our global environment, one-on-one communication will increasingly be a tremendous challenge. People have mistakenly thought that the Internet would provide a relatively cheap and easy way to reach people around the world, that a single website could broadcast a message to millions of people to which they would all respond. In fact, no single message will work in a global environment, and the pressure to reach diverse individuals as individuals puts great pressure on organizations to try to communicate as personally with their clients and patrons as they possibly can. Second, people want you to tailor-make your products and services to suit them. As the diversity of the natural world constantly reminds us, no two clients or customers are exactly alike or will ever be exactly the same. Think of your own likes and dislikes. Have you ever met anyone who liked everything exactly as you did? Or have you ever preferred everything exactly as someone else did? Of course not. So, from your own experience, recognize how natural and important it is for you to custom make your products and services as much as possible to meet the specific needs of every client or potential client. They want somebody to care about their individual differences. After all, everybody is unique and feels unique, even people who don't appear to be particularly talented or exceptional in any way. Everybody wants to stand out from the crowd in some way. That's why so many people wear such outrageous hairstyles and get tattoos and dress so flamboyantly. They are saying, look at me. I don't want to be just like everybody else. The most successful businesses and organizations recognize that individual differences are a fact of life, an aspect of human nature, and they will tailor their products and services to meet the needs of individuals wherever possible. They know that one size will never fit all. Third, by nature, people are also gregarious. They seek the company of others. They want to feel part of a crowd. As individual as people appear to want to be, they are also tremendously insecure. They want to fit in. They want to know that what they do is acceptable in the eyes of others. That's really what consumer fads are all about. People buy certain cars, dress in a certain way, even eat certain foods, just because they want to be in. Therefore, at the same time that you must respect individual differences among people, you must create opportunities for people to feel that when they are involved with your organization, they are part of a group of people who have made a solid choice by using your product or service. That gives them reassurance that what you do is valid. Give them opportunities to be with or to hear from other people so that they can feel secure. These days, you can create an almost instant crowd in cyberspace. From the standpoint of global or even national marketing, something as simple as an internet chat room could overcome the impersonality of your communications and build a worldwide network that would position your products and services positively. Fourth, by nature, people want to feel part of a family or have a vested interest in your company. After all, everyone belongs to or has belonged to a family group, even if they have no living relatives. People crave long-term relationships, especially in today's world, in which they are harder and harder to come by. Learn everything you can about every person who interacts with your organization. The most successful retailers will tell you that they insist that their salespeople build long-term relationships with their clients. They don't want them just to sell one tie, one dress, or one car. They want them to find out everything they can about their clients so that their customers will keep coming back. It is much more lucrative for an organization to keep a customer than it is to constantly spend money to advertise to get new ones. Every organization should think that way. Airlines do. Their frequent flyer airline clubs are based upon building relationships between travelers and air carriers. Once you start accumulating bonus miles with one airline, you have a vested interest in choosing it over another one. In my book, You Can't Go Wrong by Doing It Right, I discuss how one family built a trading post in the United States into a leading department store by treating each and every customer as a member of its family. People who think that the business model of the future can be some impersonal computer link between its organization and its patrons are deluding themselves. On the Internet, online businesses that go the extra mile to build ongoing connections with their patrons will be the ones that succeed. By contrast, I buy books from Amazon.com, online, of course. They are good about confirming my order when I first place it. They even notify me when my order has been shipped. But after that, I never hear from them again. It is strictly a matter of digital processing. That works against human nature and is a flaw in their business model. The fifth timeless principle of marketing is that people are not loyal. Even though you do your best to build relationships between your organization and the people it serves, don't expect them to remain loyal forever. And don't become discouraged when they disappoint you. Simply be sure that you deal with enough people so that when some patrons or clients disappoint you, you have enough to sustain your organization. It is just a fact of human nature that most people care first and foremost about themselves, about their own survival, and not about you. No matter how hard you try to build long-term relationships with your clients or patrons, most will not last. It's just the law of averages. Therefore, never become too attached to or dependent upon any person or group of people, or you will put the future and success of your organization at risk. Sixth, by nature, people do not like to face bad news about themselves or anybody close to them. People don't want strong doses of reality. They want hope. They want to feel that tomorrow will be a better day and that their lives will improve. So, accentuate the positive in your communications with the world outside of your organization.